check, whether M-Pesa, whether whatever is going to be, when should they expect to be paid?
Mr. Speaker, sir, we finalized the Village Elders Bill 2024. It is one of the 12 pieces of legislation that are awaiting cabinet approval for transmission to Parliament, and therefore that matter will be sorted out in the shortest time possible. I submit.
Waziri, I want you to again go back to Haiti, where we actually deployed almost 600 police officers. My fear now is that with what is happening around there, the fact one of my voters at home has one of his son actually deployed. And the question is, how secure? Do you have special security, insurance for this particular, just in case something has happened? Of course, that has led to a deficit of police officers. That's why when you had demonstration here, you had to get in the army because you don't have enough police officers. So of course, some of them are away. Secondly, I also have had a case in North Rift. In fact, my colleague is just walking in. The North Rift, where you have this police reservists have been disarmed, and yet we have problem in North Rift. And those are my borders, and we have that problem. And yet you have actually disarmed the police reservists. What are you doing about that?
Professor will take Dawood, note the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The CS nominee, you have promised regarding passports a couple of times, and you know passports are the most important. You initially said within a day, within a week, within 2 weeks, but apparently the passport issue has not been sorted out. The other issue is regarding the IDs. Your department has rolled out that IDs will be 10 years, whereas we have known all along IDs did not have an expiry date. What informed the decision for that one? Because now we've got Maisha number, which has been already declared unconstitutional. But what was the point of launching Maisha number when we had a Huduma number which did not work? So now, first was we've got the original ID, now Huduma number, now Maisha number. So aren't we confusing everything? Can't we have just one, the ID to be upgraded instead of all those, and data protection? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Professor, you can answer those from Ferdinand and Rahim.
Mr. Speaker, with regard to the question by the member for Kwanza, Haiti is a United Nations mission. Therefore, our officers are covered, insured, paid for by the United Nations, and therefore there is no cause of alarm. But it's also good to report good progress so far, because the officers there have been able to get part of the critical infrastructure, the port, the airport, the main police station have been recovered, and the hospital have been recovered from the gangs. And some of the gang leaders who were taunting us before have even signed for peace and are willing to engage. So they are doing a good job. We are praying for them. We hope there will be no untoward incidents. With regard to the second issue from the member for Kwanza, it is true we disarmed 400 National Police Reservists who were serving in Trans Nzoia. And there was a reason, because the NPRs were being misused. Number two, Trans Nzoia is fairly peaceful, except along the border, small issues. So we will be vetting and returning on a needs basis a smaller number of NPRs, but the number of 400 NPRs in Trans Nzoia was disproportionate with the challenge that we have in that county compared to other counties that are a little more needy. Then finally, the member for Imenti North asked about passports. When I assumed office, passport was a crisis like no other. Kenyans were waiting for a year, 6 months, 3 months, 8 months. They were bribing. They had to bribe to get passports. We had no printers, and so forth and so on. Today, we have not only paid the pending bills to the suppliers, we have enough printing equipment for personalization of passports. We have even upscaled our system, that is the ICT system, and we have cleared the backlog from 784,000 when it was at the highest, and today there is no backlog. We are issuing passports within 7 days, starting 1st of August, today. That was our deadline. We complied with that deadline 4 weeks ago, at the beginning of July. Our next deadline is therefore to bring the passport waiting period to 3 days by 1st of November this year. And we are on course. I am very happy. This is one area where we've made a lot of progress. Of course, there are small challenges here and there. We believe that we've not eradicated corrupt staff completely. We have a new crop of staff, about 120, but we are not sure that corruption has been eradicated from that directorate, and we are working on that to ensure, we'll be working on that if we are approved, to ensure that we clean up the whole place. With regard to IDs and Huduma number and Maisha number, the reason for the 10-year limit is because of technology, because unlike the ID that we are used to, the second generation ID we have, the third generation ID is a technology card, and technology keeps on growing old, and therefore that's why we have a 10-year period, and that's why even passports, they normally have a time frame. You cannot have a passport for life. That is the idea. It is not to punish Kenyans. The card has a bit of technology chips, and we want to upgrade that chip based on the security threats that will be identified by that time. The Maisha number issue is before court. We hope we will vacate the orders that were issued 2 days ago, because the problem we are having with delays with issuance of IDs is because of court orders. Last year, between November and March this year, there was a court injunction against us issuing IDs, which brought a huge backlog of almost 600,000. We cleared that backlog. We were actually left with 92,000 with those in the waiting list. And then another court injunction was issued again 2 days ago. We hope we'll be vacating it by Friday, hopefully, so that we can be able to move on with issuing IDs to the people of Kenya. I submit.
Emase.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Let me take you to the budgets. Following the recent government budget cuts across all sectors, what innovative ways will you use to mitigate the negative impacts of the budget cuts in the Ministry of Interior and National Security? Secondly, what will you prioritize if approved? What programs will you prioritize, and what will be the impact of implementing those priorities? And Kenyans are also asking, because of the unemployment situation in the country, is the recruitment of police officers affected by the budget cuts? And if not, what innovative ways, again, will you use to recruit them differently? Because as it stands, Kenyans are concerned that recruitment of police officers has become a preserve of the rich or of those who can afford to sell some land. So how are you going to make sure that employment opportunities in the Ministry of Interior are open to all Kenyans, irrespective of their tribe, their religion, where they come from, whether they have money or not? Thank you.
Hold, Professor. Yes, Missy, take those two.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prof, you'll go down the history as the first minister to be vetted twice in one term, one presidential term. Of course, the others who are coming, but for now you are the first, and that history will not be, will be there forever. And I'll take you back to what you said in the Senate, that history is replete with strong and powerful dictators who are brought down by the power of the people. And I dare say you've been brought back here to this vetting by the power of the people. I want to refer you to an event because you are a member of the National Security Council. This is the core of the security of this nation. I want to refer you to an event in history in 1962 during the Cuban Missile Crisis, something I know you are much aware of because you are an international law student or professor. During this time, the then president of US, J.F. Kennedy, had a standoff with the Soviet Union, Nikita Khrushchev. And there was an ex-com committee members, comprising of 14 members, almost akin to what we have here as the National Security Council. All those 14 members agreed that to deploy. It took J.F. Kennedy brother's advice to do otherwise. I'm not asking you to be consulting your brother, but if it were not for the brother's advice, then we could have experienced the first nuclear war to the destruction of the world. Now, I look at the events that have happened here as a result of either good or bad decision of the National Security Council. And just like somebody said that there is always an inclination towards consensus, even if a decision is bad, that the committee of people could easily incline towards psychological consensus to the destruction or to the results of a bad decision. Does National Security Council of this republic also suffer from groupthink? Groupthink in a way that there is no devil's advocate to give an alternative decision making that can save the country. Then, Speaker, if you may allow me the last, very brief. You've tried to explain the donning of the uniform, the police uniform. What surprises me, Prof, is that you give instructions to police, you give press conferences, you are adorned in the uniform of the police. But when it comes to the crimes committed against humanity by the police, that's where you say the police are independent. How independent is your uniform?
Professor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with regard to the budget cuts, we will prioritize what we consider the 5 biggest national security threats in our programming. And those are the threats of terror, organized crime, drugs, the need for drug controlling narcotic drugs, the fight against climate change, and also extremism in its various forms, religious, political, or whatever extremism, because extreme behavior can annihilate the nation. With regard to recruitment, going forward, we will ensure that each and every Kenyan, boy or girl who is recruited, can be accounted for. Because in the past, we've had so many claims of corruption and so many claims of favoritism, and therefore going forward, it's going to be demanded from the police that they account for every recruitment slot that they fill. We have a big problem of corruption in the country, and we hope the National Police Leadership Academy and the programs we want to put put there as we look for succession management and new managers of security will be able to fight corruption in the National Police Service. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Amisi asked me, I think the first was just a comment. He said, I've been brought here by the power of people, and I want to say happily, yes. Happily, yes. With regard to the second, and I say happily because it's important for public officials to be put under scrutiny and be measured using the highest possible threshold. So I have no issues, I have no problems. Even if I'm brought here 20 times, I will happily come back and try and explain myself to the people of Kenya and to the representatives of the people of Kenya. I've been asked, the second one, the last one, from the Honorable Amisi, was on whether the National Security Council is suffering from groupthink, and the answer is no. I submit.
Mukami? Honorable Mukami?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to ask our Waziri one question from a police officer who is concerned. I understand there is a court battle in the court since 2018 between the police constables. There are those who are earning higher salaries than the others. That means there are those who are in job group J, they are earning more salary, and that is why they had gone to the court, because they want to understand why there is a discrimination. The other question is about our police officers. Waziri, as you know, our officers really do a lot of work. What policy are you going to put into place to motivate our police officers? Because there are those officers who have stayed in one station for over 20 years. They've never been promoted, they've been never transferred, they are just there in that station. So we need to motivate them. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Mishi, Honorable Mishi.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, I want to ask Professor one question. Professor, as the women of this country, we are shocked and we are sick to see the rising number of femicide cases. In fact, we are really shocked when we saw the bodies which were discovered at the quarry, because all the bodies were for ladies or other women. I don't know what is the root cause of this. What contributes to all this? Who slept on the job? We need to know some answers on these issues. Second, Honorable Chairman, I know he has answered issues on the issue of officers using excessive force during protest. But I also wanted to hear from him, what future plans do you have to ensure that future protests are going to be managed in a way that there will be no loss of lives? Thank you, Honorable Chairman.
Professor?
Mr. Speaker, sir, with regard...
Hold, Professor Emaso, you have a point of order?
I think the nominee forgot to respond to mine.
Which one?
It was on the budget and the issue of recruitment.
He did.
We can respond together.
He did.
Okay.
He did, very clearly. I know was misleading you to raise that issue.
Mr. Speaker, with regard to the police officers who have been in court about salaries, mainly these were graduate police constables, people or officers who joined at constabulary level. During their time, they went to school and studied for a degree. They have been arguing that they need to be taken straight to inspectorate. And there has been a long court battle. As soon as that court matter is settled by the apex court, we'll implement whatever decision will come from our judiciary. With regard to that matter going forward, we will implement the recommendations of the Maraga Task Force, which creates 2-tier police service where you can serve in the lower ranks, and the academic requirements are different. You serve from constable to senior sergeant, or you enter the police service at inspectorate level if you are a graduate as a cadet, so that we professionalize a little more the police service and also expedite leadership generation through cadets who can assume responsibility as OCSs and commanders at county level and so forth, to avoid a situation where you have officers seeking to extend their time in office at senior levels simply because of a lack of generation of younger commanders. With regard to the motivation, we are working with the National Police Service Commission, and if I am approved, I will proceed with this discussion to provide a clearer policy on promotions, transfers, and some form of reward system which will help motivate our officers. At the moment, before I left office, we were implementing the 3-year transfer policy. I think we were at 45% compliance because of the logistical and the financial implications. If I am reappointed, if I am approved by this House, I will complete that 3-year transfer policy to make sure that it happens. And also, we will have a fast-track promotion arrangement for officers who do very well. For example, if you're a county police commander, you help in reducing crime, you help in fighting femicide, you help in fighting you have certain targets which you meet. You should be promoted faster than somebody else who is in the same level, but their performance indicators are in the negative. Finally, I've been asked 2 questions by the Honorable Mishimboko. The first one is on femicide. It is true, the cases of femicide we are seeing are worrying for the country, and it's also true we have critical gaps, especially at the lower levels of our policing and security apparatus. Both the National Intelligence Service, the National Police Service, and also Ngao. And those are things that we need to work on to avoid situations like what we are seeing. The incident that happened in Kware is quite devastating, quite a grave breach of the security of our women. And it's something that I'm taking with all seriousness. Finally, what plans will I have if I am approved by this House to ensure that we do not have loss of life when citizens exercise their right under Article 37? I will be finalizing for publication the guidelines under the Public Order Act, the one I explained earlier, not to take away the light, but to facilitate, to create an environment where it can be enjoyed, to create responsibility on those who are having protests. Because if you say you have a protest to Parliament, for example, and the designated area for protests can only accommodate 1,000 protesters, you cannot say, I want 2 million protesters outside Parliament, because it's not feasible. So we'll have to give those guidelines so that as Kenyans can enjoy these rights while respecting the rights of others in accordance with the Constitution. I submit.
Sharia?
Thank you, Chairman. CS nominee in the Court of Public Opinion and in some independent surveys done in this country, the Ministry of Interior and National Administration has been identified as the one with the highest prevalence of corruption in this country. How do you intend to address this menace if approved?
Let's take Honorable Russ also.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Professor, when a Kenyan reads a Gazette notice of Kenya Gazette, they will tend to believe that is the true reflection of a policy direction from government. In March this year, you closed the Ilo gold mine in Moyale, that it will be closed for 30 days following the skirmishes that had taken place. But since then, over 30 lives have been lost, including that of security officers. That particular area has turned out to be a black market for mineral entrepreneurs, and the citizenry have generally lost faith in government and also in the security agency. My question to you, if the House approves your nomination, what is it that you are likely to do to reaffirm the community's faith in that the government does what it says it will do, and also that the security of that area, because Dabel has the inhabitants community, that the security is restored. Secondly, Honorable Speaker, those of us who come from the border areas, we have very porous borders. There's influx of arms, contraband, drugs, and also illegal immigrants. But what we are experiencing also is so many roadblocks and checkpoints. Some actually are rent seekers as opposed to for purposes of security. Professor, if the House approves your nomination, what is it that you are likely to do to ensure there is security for Kenya, but also the communities that are traversing or traveling on those roads are not, to an extent, inhumanly disadvantaged? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Professor.
Mr. Speaker, with regard to the question by the Honorable Kithure, it is true corruption is a big cancer in the National Police Service, in the public sector of our country, the two levels of government and the three arms of government. In our assessment of national security threats that are existential in nature, I have said earlier we have identified 5 existential threats to our country's future. Terrorism and violent extremism is one of them. Banditry and other organized crimes is the second. The third one is the problem of narcotic drugs, psychotropic substances, and all that goes with that. The fourth one is climate change and how it is creating disruption of livelihoods and breeding conflicts among communities. The fifth one is corruption. And therefore, going forward, if I'm reappointed, I am going to escalate programs, policies, and measures to eradicate corruption within the organs of the national security that are within the Ministry of Interior, but also propose for the rest of the country, the rest of the government and public sector, measures that can help us secure the country, because it's no longer an issue of the corruption by the police. It's an issue of corruption being able to actually threaten the country's future. And therefore, corruption is top 5 of our national security threat. Lastly, I've been asked about by the Honorable Didoraso about Hilo. It is true. Hilo gold mine in Dabel, Moyale. We closed in March for 30 days, but we've extended those orders. We have identified that area as a disturbed area because we lost some people there who were fighting over mineral rights, mainly illegal miners who had come, even some of them from other countries. So we closed it on security considerations. We are in talks with the Ministry of Mining to see how an orderly resumption of mining activities can happen. I was there physically in June. I was planning to go back in July before this happened. In the interim, we have lost a few people because of illegal activities around there, even as we speak, on a very low scale though. We even lost 2 police officers in the last 2 weeks. So as soon as if I am approved, as soon as I'm in office, I will prioritize the Dabel issue to ensure orderly resumption of lawful mining activities to the benefit of the communities that are there. With regard to borders, the multi-agency roadblocks we have, especially the one in Archer's Post, the one in Mombasa, the Garsen-Malindi Highway, all the multi-agency roadblocks are working well, including the Kanyonyo one, the one on Garissa Mwingi, Nairobi Highway. What the criminals have done, those who smuggle arms and aliens and drugs, they are using alternative routes. What am I going to do? The same multi-agency approach that we have used on the main highways will increase our surveillance and put multi-agency effort, not necessarily roadblocks, but patrol teams by our special forces on the alternative routes that drug traffickers, human traffickers, and other criminals are using to harm our country. I submit.
Honorable Mule.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, nominee. Honorable Speaker, I want to ask Professor that he came to be the Minister for Interior after the last election and be vetted by this committee and approved, and understanding very clearly the economic policy of the Kenya Kwanza policy of bottom-up economic transformation. You have been in office, and I want to bring you to your attention that the National Assembly put up regulations for private security firms to be regulated properly. And in the view of the better or the bottom-up, it was to create employment. But in the time you have been in the office, this industry has suffered tremendous losses whereby you have not given them any regulations, you have not restored order and system in the private sector. And I would wish to know exactly what are you going to do. These private companies have been providing employment to more than almost 1.5 million Kenyans, and they could do better if the government enables proper regulations to create that. And you revoked the license of the Private Security Regulatory Authority, whereby 9 companies plus in this country have not been able to create employment. Are you in the tandem of the idea of creating employment, or making sure that there is no more employment and reducing the tax collection for the government? Because that is in your docket, whereby you need to create environment. And being the last person, Mr. Speaker, I would wish to ask the CS to give us a number of activities he has participated in pro bono work in this country, preview to being a CS or after being nominated as a CS in this country. And last but not least,
CS, the issue, I'm the last one, so I just want to give him 10 minutes to respond to me. The nominee, the issue of ID in this country is really, really alarming, especially to the young people who are intending to join institutions of higher learning. And I can assure you, quite a number of them, they are not able to register or for admission in the Institute of Higher Learning. What can you do better to make sure that every young people, and especially the Gen Zs, immediately they are clearing their secondary school, they acquire their IDs at the tail end of their Form 4? Why do we have to wait for them to get out to the field and start struggling to get this opportunity? What collaboration will you do with the Ministry of Education? By the time these young people leave school, they already have an ID. We don't need to wait until they get out here to start struggling. What measures are you going to put if, and I'm using the word if carefully, you'll be approved by Parliament and this committee?
Professor.
Mr. Speaker, sir, the private security regulations emanated from our ministry, of course, were presented to National Assembly for approval. So those regulations themselves speak to the fact that we've been actively involved in generating policy guidance and framework for this very critical sector. In fact, it is my belief, having interacted now with the ministry for 21 months, that the private security, if a little bit regulated in terms of the curriculum and the kind of content those that are recruited there go through, can help us in providing security for some of the private and not so critical installations. And we can vet some of the deserving cases to even be armed, so that instead of having a police officer manning a supermarket or even a bank, sometimes like it happens in Uganda and other countries, you can have very qualified private security people vetted and armed to supplement the work of the police, so that we don't overstretch the national police officers. On the second issue from the Honorable Mule, it is true that the Private Security Regulatory Authority had revoked 9 licenses. The 9 companies appealed to the Cabinet Secretary, and I reversed that revocation in accordance with Section 43 of the Act. So those licenses that were revoked, they were reinstated on appeal. Then the issue of pro bono work. Pro bono work, I understand it to mean unpaid work. That's the understanding of pro bono work from my very limited legal background. I don't know, like which one now, maybe in church or at home or where. Because since I became minister, I have no free time to do anything. I have no time to do anything. I hardly sleep, I hardly have a weekend. Night and day are the same for me. But before then, I used to volunteer in many activities, some organized by Law Society of Kenya, some organized by church organizations, etc., etc. The last question by the Honorable Mule is on identity cards. We have suffered the current discomfort because of court injunctions. That's number one. Court injunctions for 4 months between last year and early this year, and right now there's even another court injunction. Number two, we have suffered the disruption because of change in technology from the 2nd generation ID to the 3rd generation ID. And I have explained the need for us to change the technology, because the current ID we have, the second generation ID, cannot be recognized outside these countries, cannot even be a travel document. The security features are very rudimentary, very basic. And therefore the move to new technology, better technology, more secure document has caused disruption. Court injunctions have also caused distraction. And just like passports, in the event that I am reappointed, because the member said he used if deliberately, of course, I also want to promise, if I am reappointed, the same way I have focused on reforming the immigration directorate and helping unclog the passport inefficiency problem, I will focus on IDs and also birth and other citizen documents to ensure that we get optimum results. In fact, for example, a death or birth certificate should be obtained the same day, within 12 hours on application. And perhaps the ID, we should be able again to once we get out of the court injunction, we should be able to retain the 7-day target. At the moment, we are working with 21 days before the injunction.
Thank you, Minister nominee. Sorry, Naisula. I didn't want to go on another round.
Speaker, I will not. After this nominee, I'll never ask for another round, and it's not a question, it's just a comment. Because I'm very passionate about the issues on North Rift, and if the nominee happens to be approved by this committee in the National Assembly, I would like to just say that even as you deal with security matters and the hardware, please remember also peace and dialogue of those communities. Now that there seems to be some semblance of calm, this is the best opportunity to now engage those communities to deal with the stereotypes, and also for them to be able to remove the criminals among the communities. Please, in case this committee passes you, approves you, ensure that you have a budget that will help you to engage the communities so that we can deal this issue once and for all. For Shakahola and Kware and all the other issues, we want to see action and not just talk.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, for the supplementary one. In conclusion, CS nominee, your appointing authority has considered to the country that one of the failings that the President considered to was lack of communication. You have told us here of very good measures that you have taken in the State Department for Immigration, especially in the processing of passports and all that. However, that information is never in the purview of the public, members of the public. And indeed, I have an incident, CS, where a Kenyan in the US called me very desperate that they could not get their passport despite having paid somebody about 20,000 shillings. For a passport, was, I think the normal charge is about 4,000 or 3,000 something. And when I followed up the case, the person who was even paid this bribe was not an officer at the Immigration Department, and he took the intervention of the Director General of Immigration, Ms. Evelyn, to get the DCI to hunt for that person. Somebody extorting Kenyans money from Eastlands, pretending to be working in your house. And therefore, the lack of communication aspect in your ministry is what I want you to address. Should you, or if you are approved, what are you going to do to ensure that there is proper communication to the public, so that the public are not taken advantage of by criminals out there in Eastlands and elsewhere who are extorting bribes from Kenyans on the pretext that they are working in Nyayo House? And just like Owen Bayer said, you once declared Nyayo House a crime scene. That crime scene now seems to have moved from Nyayo House to the periphery of Nyayo House and other areas. I would want to hear what specific measures you intend to take to make sure there is proper communication. Kenyans know how much they ought to pay and to who
and so that they're not taken advantage of, because you are also aware that has been very rampant.
Chairman, thank you. Chairman, I just wanted to ask the CS, this issue of the IDs. Professor, you say the IDs will expire after 10 years. Have you put into consideration the vast areas, people like in North Turkana, how far they travel to get IDs? Because IDs are not like passport, they're essential documents that people must have all the time. After, you know, it will be cumbersome for them to go to those centers to go and get IDs. And secondly, on this unrest, you have seen that, as you have said, the ID resigned. But are you aware in your absence while you are away? We used to talk about while you are away.
He's still
no, but that, what is your take? That we were told 60 years, Mr. Speaker, I'm putting it in a better way.
Yes.
We were told when somebody reaches 60 years, he should leave the public service. Are you aware that a new ID has been nominated who's 64 years or 63 years, who was retired, who is being recycled? I don't know what extra thing is going to bring. And my last question is on illicit brews. The Interior Ministry has been accused by the Deputy President of sabotaging the war in illicit brews. Is the war on illicit brews only being waged in Mount Kenya? What aspects of this war are being undertaken in the Interior Ministry, and what is being done by the Office of the Deputy President? How much funds have been used in this war in the last 2 years when you were the Interior Ministry, before you were fired?
Nominee, on the issue of the IG, I direct you not to answer the question, because I've received communication from the President nominating the nominee, who will be vetted by a committee of parliament, and those questions can be raised there. If you answer that here, you'll be prejudicing what is coming to parliament. Answer the other questions.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, Honorable Nasula was a comment, we've taken it on board. Honorable Kimani Chungwa's issue was about communication. When I assumed office in October 2022, I began a habit of every 3-4 months updating the country on the status of our homeland security. We've not had one in a while. I had planned one for June, which was postponed and thereafter disrupted. We will use our public accountability updates on security matters to communicate more on what we are doing. And the next, if I am approved by this House, the next public accountability address will feature more on the reforms we have made at Immigration Department, because I think there we've made a lot of success. People concentrate on the banditry thing, but I think also on the passport issue we made a lot of success. Where we still have problems is the IDs and other aspects of citizenship documents. With regard to the ID, the question by the Honorable Junaid Mohammed, the reason for the 10-year limit, there are two reasons. It's actually one reason. It's because of changes in technology. Unlike the ID we have, which has no security features, and therefore it can be timeless. But we'll find a way of making it convenient to the people of Kenya to renew after the 10 years, so that you don't create a crisis by people, and we can do that by even having a phased out renewal process to ensure that, again, we don't inconvenience masses of people. So the problem is technology and the security features in the third generation ID, which is going to be physical, that is the Maisha card. It is going to be also digital, the digital ID. You can have it digitally. So all those are options for the third generation ID, quite sophisticated in tandem with the current trends in security on identity documents. With regard to the issue raised on Bruce, I would be hesitant to respond to the comment associated with the Deputy President for obvious reasons. But I think, to the best of my knowledge, the Minister of Interior was not cited as frustrating the war. If there are specific officers in the ministry, I think that is something that needs to be looked into to make sure that all of us are reading from the same script. The government policy is to make sure that illicit brews, toxic substances and drugs are not provided to our kids, not just in central Kenya, but everywhere in the country. With regard to how much money the Deputy President office has used, again, I am not privy, and I think that is the office that can answer that question. How much funds have we used in the fight against brew? We have not allocated any special budget in the Ministry of Interior in the fight against illicit alcoholic drinks and drugs. We have used our normal budgets, our normal security operations budget, to carry out that program as part of the normal programs. I submit.
Professor, I'll ask you one or two questions. The first one is a furtherance on the issue of IDs. As you introduce a 10-year ID, just take into account that an ID in this country is everything. You can't enter a supermarket, you can't open a bank account. The old and PWDs cannot access social safety net funds without an ID. Now, if you are going to have that ID last for 10 years, then you must put in place a seamless renewal process so that people don't suffer because of failure to renew an ID card. And you, as if you are approved to go back to office, I would want to see that you draft regulations that will guide and manage renewal of IDs and bring to Parliament for approval. The second issue I want to ask you, nobody asked you, prisons fall under your authority if you are approved. What are you doing, or what do you propose to do about prison reforms? I remember when we were senators and we went with you to Kithure, and we found prisoners literally half naked, poorly dressed, and looking like they were very poor hygienic conditions in which they were operating. What are you going to do, if approved, in prison reforms to make prisons more humane? And also, what are you going to do to reverse the continuing stealing and grabbing of public land occupied by prisons in the country, which is going on all over? Thirdly, the new constitution allows Kenyans who had left the country, taken greener pastures, and acquired citizenships of other countries to reacquire Kenyan citizenship on application. That's what the constitution says. But we get a lot of communication and phone calls from Kenyans out there who are struggling to reclaim their citizenship because they have either British or American or whatever citizenship. What are you doing to simplify? Because the Constitution says you reclaim your citizenship on application. What are you going to do to simplify the process of reclaiming citizenship by Kenyans who lost their citizenship? If you can answer those, then I'll come to other simpler questions to you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, on the first issue of IDs, I agree with your recommendation and guidance that we should consider seamless transition from after the 10 years to avoid creating a crisis. I believe it will be possible because we had a similar situation with passports when we went into e-passports. So what you do, for example, is to say that the ID that has expired will continue operating until you get a new one, for example, because you cannot be faulted because of a government administrative measure. Number two, we will make sure that we anticipate and put in place a rapid response initiative where you deploy additional facilities, additional service points, additional personnel, even if it's on a temporary basis, at a time when many of these IDs will be expiring. But by and large, the old ID, the expired ID should work until when the state gives you a new one, because it's simply for technology purposes, safety features. It is not that we will give again another ID. It might even be the same depending on whether or not we will consider that ID as being secure, a secure document by that time. With regard to regulations as guided, we will prioritize that, Mr. Speaker. With regard to Kenya prisons, we have part of the Maraga Task Force report. We have a number of recommendations on modernizing and reforming the prisons, which we are taking up. I have prepared a CAB memo, which had not been submitted to Cabinet, but I'm sure if I'm reappointed, that will be a priority. And the areas of reform include making the prison enterprises more productive by investing in better technology in their workshops to make sure they produce more competitive goods which are affordable. Number two, welfare issues.
In fact, these seats you see here were made by prisons.
Absolutely. So if they are empowered, because that is labor and skill is available, if they are given better equipment, and for carpentry, for masonry and other skills in the prisons, we're going to have better output and generate more revenue and avoid the prisons relying on S-check all the time in these times of constrained budget. We also want to make sure that we improve on welfare issues, including the terms and conditions of service of prison wardens, is part of the Maraga Task Force recommendation in consultation with the SRC. We also are working on software issues, for example, providing mattresses. We have a program called One Prisoner, One Mattress program, where up to now we have provided 10,000 from our budget, but also with the support of other partners. And we want to make sure that every prisoner at least has a mattress, as we even work on physical facilities and the housing for our prison warders. We want to construct 28,000, and we have already, I think, I don't have the figures right now, but I think we've done nearly 500 in different prison facilities. We want to do 28,000, which should almost meet the entire demand, because that is almost the population of our prison personnel complement. Other than that, the prison land, there are certain serious encroachments on prison land. The most notorious one is the Kithure prison land, where out of the 3,000 acres, only less than 300 are available. The rest have been grabbed by powerful and former senior people in various administrations and their friends. We will have to recover it. We have engaged the National Land Commission and other stakeholders. We will recover the land. Number two, we have provided as a policy that every prison land must have a title deed. Many of our prison lands are not titled, so we are working with our partners. We've been working with our partners in the Ministry of Lands to make sure that every land of prison land is protected through titling. The last question, Mr. Speaker, sir, you asked is about those Kenyans who are regaining citizenship. We have made tremendous progress, and I want to admit, in line with what the Leader of Majority said, I think the communication is what we need to improve on. We have made tremendous improvement and reforms in the processing of citizenship applications by foreign nationals who want to be Kenyans, but also by Kenyans who had lost their nationality before the 2010 Constitution and are now entitled to reapply. When I came to office, there were 2,700 pending applications. I cleared the backlog within 30 days. Right now, we are receiving applications on a rolling basis. I had directed the Directorate to ensure that from the time of application to the time the Minister signs off that application for regaining citizenship, it should not be more than 21 days. And I think that is work in progress. Lastly, how do we simplify? We will reduce the paperwork. There is a bit of paperwork in that Directorate, and we want to reduce it and go digital and make sure that we even bring the timelines from 21 days to 7 days to possibly 3 days on application. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lastly, nominee, do you hold any leadership position in any political party?
No.
Have you ever been adversely mentioned in any integrity-related reports?
No.
On investigations? Do you hold citizenship of any other country?
No.
What is your worth?
694 million.
Made of?
Made of I have 2 homes, one in Nairobi and one in Tharaka Nithi. Then I have laddered buildings, about 235 million. My 2 homes are worth 190 million. And then I also have savings in SACCOs and banks. I also do legal practice, so I have a bit of revenue that I've generated through my law firm, and that is it. And I forgot, Mr. Speaker, when I was filling in, I forgot to add, I have vehicles of about 17 million, which are not part of that report. I apologize. I remembered after I had submitted the questionnaire.
Honorable members, we received memoranda from one Eliud Karanja Matindi, Isaac Alwocher, Joseph Mwathi Njui, Khalid Ibrahim, Aisha Adan, Sonia Mushila, Masi Murugi Kuria, Ahmed Sigat, Okio Mtato Koit, David Malombe, and Collins Onyango. We forwarded them to the nominee, and the nominee responded to all of them in writing. We have them on record. Professor, we allocated 2 hours. We've done with you 2 hours and 10 minutes. We want to inform you that this brings to an end our interaction with you. The clerk has checked all your documents against what you submitted have been found to be correct and in order. And unless you are lawfully held, you are now released to go to your other businesses. Members, I'll give you a 10-minute health break. Let the CS go alone first so that you are not accused of causing with a nominee. Yes. Yes. How many? Robert Mboy is asking for 15 minutes. It is so directed.
Abdi Shurie.
Mishimboko Likoni.
Rehab Mukami Washira.
I'm Caleb Amisi Saboti.
We also have the secretariat that is supporting this process, led by the deputy clerk, Sarah Kyoko. Where is she? And all those good people sitting behind, who will be giving us some behind the curtain support. Professor Kindiki, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
We'll start by asking you the obvious question.
The disabled, the widows, among others. And I believe that it is critical for us to ensure that we have robust communication with the community. I think it is important that they own this initiative and they are part of it even during implementation. That way, the uptake will be great and we will see many Kenyans achieving this. And from our side, I think it's critical that once we have promised our fellow Kenyans, we need to deliver and ensure that every Kenyan has access to affordable quality care.
Posing.
Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, Speaker. Dr. Barasa, having been nominated for this position, you know that health is generally or greatly devolved. Greatly devolved. And there have been a clamor or a debate outside there that we should have a national commission for doctors or practitioners, health practitioners, and so on. And for good reason. And one of the reasons is to balance health practitioners at the county level. Because that is where the biggest problem is, Madam Dr. Barasa. Because of lack of balance of medical or specialized medical people, you find that actually some of these hospitals are running like maybe, I would say, Panadol hospitals. All county hospitals actually run like Panadol hospitals. Because Panadol is just something small to make you at least live till tomorrow. Take an example of North Rift. Turkana County, West Pokot County, Elgeyo Marakwet County, Trans Nzoia County, even Bungoma County. Almost everybody is going to Eldoret for medical services. Why? Because they don't find those services. Maybe because of lack of specialized practitioners. So my two questions. One, will you support the clamor for the constitutional amendment to have this commission to be able to work out on that balancing of medical practitioners so that our people can get medical services at the right places at the county level? Or if that's a long term, what will you do if Parliament approves you, working together with governors, to be able to increase or help that health specialist at the county level so that at least we can have our people at local level receiving medical services? Thank you, Speaker.
Through you, Honorable Chair, I would like to answer the question by the Honorable Member. Indeed, with the devolution, we've seen a lot of challenges. My approach, again, would be a consultative approach, involving the counties, involving the National Technical Working Group, the DG, the PS, and all the stakeholders involved, including partners. And in this case, we need to have these consultations in routine basis to discuss the HR capacity. Additionally, we need to come with strategies, action plans, including regulations, to ensure that all the counties have the appropriate specialists. And we can monitor the presence and the activities of the specialists using a digital platform, of which I strongly advocate for. I can also say that I am a member of the Eastern Central Southern African College of Physicians. And in this program, I was the initial group of trainers that was trained in Entebbe, and this program was rolled out in Kenya. and we are almost having the first lot graduating, and they're 41 in number. Additionally, there are other specialist training going on for gynecology and obstetrics as well as surgery. And these are areas that we can engage with the programs and see how to support the various counties so that they can have specialists trained within the facility.
Vicaria.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry. Daktari Deborah, nitauliza kwa Kiswahili tuone kama tuta budget kubwa sana ya Ministry ya Health inaenda kwa mambo ya matibabu. Magonjwa yametendeka, tunaenda kutibu na mambo mengine. Kukaja na policy ya kuweka the CHVs, the Community Health Volunteers, ambaye wao watashughulika sana na kujaribu kuzuia kabla pengine, na unajua hawalipwi kwa wakati unaofaa, na zile hela pia wanazopatiwa ni hela kidogo sana. Pengine njia gani utatumika kuona kama wataweza kupata hela zao kwa wakati unaofaa na pengine kuongeza juu kidogo, ndio waweze kusaidia kwa kuzuia kabla haijafika ile ya kutumia hela nyingi ya kwenda ku. Pili, watu wengi wanapata ajali, emergency na mambo mengine, magonjwa ambayo pengine hayaku ama kama ni accidents za barabara. Wanapoenda katika mahospitali yetu, nisiseme ya counties kwa sababu pengine kwa sababu hiyo iko devolved, lakini katika hospitali za serikali wanakatazwa kuwa admitted ama kuchukuliwa katika ile emergency ya dharura ya haraka kwa sababu hawana pesa za kulipa deposit na mambo mengine. Pengine ni njia gani utachukua kuweza kufanya hali hii isiwe ni kitu cha kurudiwa vile tunavyoona kila wakati? Asante.
Answer.
Through you, Honorable Chair, I would like to answer the question by the Honorable Member. Indeed, the community health program is critical because it brings health back to the community. And community health workers are a strong pillar in health system strengthening. And so we need to embrace them and support them. Working in Fikiria Jamii, which is which are 17 clinics in the eastern Isili region, the eastern side of Nairobi. It covered Shauri Moyo, Huruma, Mathare, Kariobangi, part of Korogosho up to Kayole. We were able to strengthen the community health program. And what we did is ensure that they were bringing mothers for antenatal care, bringing children for immunization, distributing disinfectants, providing preventive promotion care and rehabilitation, because they were part of the community. And the work was marvelous, and I'm happy that the country is embracing the community health program. And so we need to support them, and again, a consultative effort involving the multiple stakeholders so that as a team we can come up with action plans and interventions. Equally, we need to involve other sectors like the Treasury and see if we can have funds to allocate for their support. Additionally, partners are critical as well as the CSOs. So we need to involve partners to collaborate and synergize our efforts in order for us to have the fruitful implementation of community health programs and universal health coverage in general. For the emergencies, again, even as we transition, we need to ensure that they are covered, and we need, even in the UHC program, part of what is covered is emergency conditions. And so I believe that by incorporating this, all Kenyans will be able to access care even in emergent situations.
Honorable Robert Mbui.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Nominee, corruption cases have been a major problem in the health sector. Some time back, there were those clinics that were bought, containers that were being charged at about 10 million a piece, which was highly exorbitant. And recently also we've seen when we had COVID, there were scandals at KEMSA, and there was even a recent scandal under this regime which led to the dismissal of the PS then of health. What will you do to minimize, or if possible, completely eradicate this menace of corruption in that health sector?
Through you, Chair, I would like to address the issue of corruption by honorable member. Again, a consultative effort. It is important that we think strategically, involve the various stakeholders involved, the National Technical Working Group, the PSs and DGs, to understand, to conduct a situational analysis and see where the gaps are. But from my opinion, I think that we need to strengthen the processes and procedures that exist. And one of the ways is through a digital platform. That way, we reduce the human-to-human interface. We can be able to track, say, for instance, how a Panadol from batch 001 gets from the national up to the patient's hand. Yeah, and so we'll be able to ensure that there is a seamless flow. So I am an advocate for the digital platform. Equally, we can involve external bodies to monitor also the challenges that are involved therein, and we can have routine meetings and feedback. Additionally, we need to have accountability and visibility frameworks, and also work together with the various commissions to address the issue of corruption.
Bayer. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I've listened to the nominees so far, Deborah. My name is Owen Bayer. I'm not the honorable member. I hear you talk about situational analysis. I hear you talk, I've counted them, there are 10 now. Digital platform, there are 8 consultations, there are around 7 there. You keep on using the same ones all the time. But the health sector is a big thing, big, very big. And I think it carries one of the biggest budgets in this country. And it has been a Tower of Babel. Okay, there are a lot of conflicting people striking, court cases, a lot of issues. It requires a very high level of leadership. And that high level of leadership is policy. But as I listen to you, I'm not hearing you enunciate or really bring out policy issues apart from consultation. I think the health sector suffers from real strong policies that can drive the sector, so that we have all these issues, these strikes, and everything else really not in place. There's been the question that has been asked on, will you support a health service commission, which everybody else has been talking about. Probably that's the panacea for the problems that we have in health. So Deborah, Dr. Deborah, my question is, what skills do you bring? Are you able to work with people much easier? There has been a lot of, the PS is saying this, the minister is saying this, the DG is saying this, the CECs in the counties are saying something else, the governors, Council of Governors is saying something else. How will you amalgamate all these things and bring real leadership in the health sector so that we do not have the problems that have deviled the health sector over the years? I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Go ahead.
Through you, Honorable Chair, I would like to address the question by the Honorable Member, Mr. Owen. Yes, from a leadership and a management perspective, it's always consultative. It's not a one-man show. The people, the National Technical Working Group, have been there for
Fra oppvarming til startblokker.
They understand the gaps, and they are able to come up with interventions. The thing that we need is to support them, to identify the gaps and come up with improvement plan. And so for me, I believe that it's critical that I give the leadership and bringing the people together to collaborate, to synergize, to harmonize, to improve the services that are being given.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Dr. Deborah, two very quick ones. Ministry of Health is one of the most important ministries in the country. It's for the rich and the very poor, it's for everybody. And what is bedeviling people living in the villages is we have small dispensaries which have no drugs because county governments are not able to stock them. And Kenyans are crying over whether really we should have this under the county governments or we should actually revert the entire ministry to the national government. If a law ever came to revert the ministry to the national government, would you, if approved as the CS for health, support it? Number one. Number two, again from the same scenario, everybody goes to a hospital. As soon as God helps you recover, you have no money to settle your bill, and if any through Arambes you have all these problems, and eventually hospitals, including public hospitals, start detaining patients. And the converse of that, sometimes you may die, and the hospital detains the dead body. What policy would you put in place to ensure there is a balance, that you cannot be detained in hospital forever when you've recovered, or you can't have your body if you're there? Your relatives cannot have your body detained forever. At one point, there must be a stop to that. What sort of a policy would you put in place?
And answer?
Through you, Honorable Chair, I would like to address the question by the Honorable Member. Yes, so currently we have a devolved government, but we need to ensure that the supplies and we are monitoring and ensuring that the supplies and services are ongoing in the last mile. And that's why I'm encouraging the digital platform. I have seen it work. I have seen it work in Fikiria Jamii. I've seen it work in Mata Hospital. I have seen it work in the World Health Organization. I have seen us track medicines coming into the port and distributing it across Africa. We can monitor. We can also ensure quality. We can monitor and ensure that the health workers are in the facilities and they are conducting activities as needed. So a digital platform is the way to go. There are many challenges that we face. There are many teething problems that will come. But when we have that, then even the counties can sit in their offices and be rest assured, looking at the quality, tracking on the medications, what is out of stock, etc. So a digital platform is critical. And again, about moving from county to national level, a consultative approach. We need to be strategic, yeah? It's not one man making decision or one woman in this case. I believe that we need to involve the county governments, we need to involve the national team and come up with the best interventions to address this.
Deborah, before you go to the next question, please do hand over your documents to the clerk's team so that they can do verification while we are going on. The Honorable Ferdinand. Oh, you have one more question? The retention of dead bodies and recovered patients until money is paid to various hospitals. What will you do? That's what the Honorable Member has asked.
Yes. So strategically thinking, we need to consult and see what are the gaps, what is causing this, and then involve Treasury.
It's money.
Yeah. So I'm coming out of government. So my first agenda will be to review these cases with the national technical team and the county government to identify what is causing or contributing to this challenge. And from there, I believe we'll be able to get interventions.
Ferdinand.
I think it's more or less the same thing, but all I'm saying, Madam, if we are going to be appointed as a CS in health, I think reducing the health care, let's be serious about it. As my colleague has just mentioned, it's very, very serious, a crucial item as we members of parliament. Even now as I'm sitting here, there are phones coming from my constituency. Please, we have got Harambe. Yeah. But then, of course, you as a PS, you are coming in, should be able to have very strategic plans so that the expensive treatments like cancer, which is again coming up every time, should be able to come up with something very, very strategic for us to reduce the cost of treatment and, of course, affordable access to health care. Come up with something that can be able to save these members of parliament in having Harambes every other day, because somebody is going to India. Instead of us, somebody come here, had 2-3 cases where somebody went to India and he died there. So, and everybody now comes to me, how do you get the body here? But more so, this so-called cancer drugs, which is actually is an issue in this country. So come up with a plan. So I see your experience is very wide. So let's hope that you're going to have that kind of plans to be able to assist us in this. Can you say
just
something?
A statement, Daud?
Thank you.
Just take into account the positive statement made by the Honorable Ferdinand.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Dr. Deborah, first, NHIF, will you change the system, or whichever it comes, that a patient can only go to one hospital, nominated hospital, and if somebody gets sick anywhere in the country or anywhere, they cannot go to any other hospital but just one? Secondly, I don't know if you answered the same question by my colleague. Would you consider that all health workers be moved to a health service commission, just like the TSC? And thirdly, the National Assembly passed my bill of cancer prevention in April. And with that bill, it talks about getting more oncologists trained, and because we've got 40,000 people dying of cancer, it's even higher than even COVID. COVID did not kill as many people as cancer does every year. And what do you think you would have interventions to train more people and have more cancer treatment centers in the country? And the last one is level 4 and level 5s. I'm not talking about dispensaries. Would you think that level 4 and level 5s should come back, like the referral Kenyatta Hospital, to the national government? Because 70% of the funds in the health ministry are held by by your ministry, if you are confirmed. So do you think level 4 and level 5 should be taken over by the national government from the counties? Thank you.
3 questions. 1, he says, will level 4, 5s be transferred from the counties to the national government? The second one, about the cancer treatment. And the third one was, will you support, if confirmed, to create the National Health Service Commission? I think there is some doctor somewhere who is sending this message to all of us. I've received it 3 times.
And there's a fourth one, right, Chairman?
Yes.
The fourth one was regarding NHIF.
Yes.
In one hospital, will she change the policy that it should not just be one hospital nominated? They can go anywhere, so long as they've got NHIF. They do not have to go to one hospital.
Actually, that is part of the law you passed recently that is being challenged in court, isn't it? Go ahead and answer.
Through you, Chair, thank you, Honorable Member, for the questions.
Yes, Nelson?
The purpose of this, if you just told me, is actually so that you can address the members by their names.
Yes.
And this is the Committee on Appointments, just for your information.
Yes. So don't just say Honorable Member. That one is called Honorable Dawood. Okay,
My humble apologies for that.
Yes.
I will address them by the names.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Honorable Dawood, for the wonderful questions. First of all, I would like to talk about local production of medicines and consumables. I think that Kenya, we need to embrace this. Local production of medicines, the health products, is really one way to reduce the costs of medication. And so it's an area that we need to embrace as Kenyans, and based on the budget, then we can consider strengthening this. In addition, regarding the NHIF, the universal health care looks at offering accessible care, affordable care, and quality of care to all Kenyans, including the vulnerable and those with disability, among others. And so the issue of only being able to be seen in one hospital is not part of the universal health coverage. And hence, I believe that once we have implemented the UHC, first of all, the community health promoters will be able to improve the prevention, promotion, rehabilitative interventions within the community. So even for cancer cases, they'll be educated on preventive measures, and those who are having terminal illnesses, rehabilitation will be ongoing. Equally, strengthening the primary care networks is critical because it's the first contact and it filters the mild cases, ensuring that the severe cases are the only ones going to the other levels of care, and hence there's reduction in the overwhelming of other levels of care. And so I believe that we can have this as accessible, affordable, quality care by strengthening our community health promoters or the community health programs, as well as the primary care networks, and ensuring that we are offering quality care across all levels of care. So regarding the specializations such as in oncology, as discussed earlier, we have the East Central Southern African College of Physicians, which is a program that is running in multiple hospitals within the country, supporting doctors to specialize. We may also consider having this for other specialists, including the nurses, and see how to see how they can grow career-wise as the health workforce, and that way we can also have access to care. For the doctors at the national team, I believe it will be a consultative approach. I cannot make that decision myself. I believe that it's critical that I involve the whole team, the stakeholders, the partners, and other sectors to be able to see how to address this issue.
Point of order, Speaker. Which issue? And I thought if it is about the commission, health, what is your opinion, nominee minister? If you say consultative, what is your opinion as the leader? Do you support, you don't support, even before you do consultation? What is your input? What is your mind? Yeah, yes. you are running away from being personal.
Yes.
We want to get your suitability, you, not a group, but you. Thank you, Speaker.
Go ahead.
So
the question is, if you are confirmed,
yes,
will you support the creation of the National Health Service Commission? There is some doctor somewhere sending this to all of us.
As part,
ask you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair, and thank you, Honorable Members. As part of the doctors' fraternity, I support the National Health Service Commission. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mary. Eh?
The one for level 4 and 5 to move. I'll help you to answer.
The level 4 and 5, Honorable Dawood, I believe that is critical.
To be fair to the interviewee, even as minister, she has no capacity in law to lift level 4 and 5 from the counties to the national government. It must be a legislation and an agreement between the two levels of government to transfer. So even her opinion here will be relevant. Mary Mase.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Deborah, I put it to you that for you to be able to realize your policy objectives, you must have adequate or sufficient financing. But when you look at the Ministry of Health, and especially health research, it remains significantly underfunded. And when you look at the budget of the ministry, there's notable dependency on donor funding, especially on research, disease control and management when it comes to control of malaria, HIV, AIDS, name them. My question to you, from your experience in the health space, what are the barriers to achieving optimal funding in health research? Secondly, there are a number of hospitals, if you are approved by Parliament, there are a number of hospitals across the country that have been built through World Bank funding, GOK, and have remained unoperationalized for a number of years. Beautiful structures. Case in point is in my constituency, Amukura. Beautiful structure. They have not been operationalized, no furniture, nothing. So if you are successful, please do an audit of all such hospitals across the country, ensure they have been operationalized so that there's value for money, and before you start building others or advise for others to be put up. I think that the last one, just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Mary, for the wonderful question. I have done a lot of facility assessment, right from the community-based organizations, various facilities at the different levels of care, and also at supporting various countries within the Eastern Southern Africa, as well as the Afro 47 member states supported by WHO. And I'm an advocate for facility assessment. We need to have good capacity, offer quality of care for our patients. And so that will be a top priority for me, to ensure that routine assessment is conducted and that our hospitals are offering quality services. Again, a digital platform would be good to ensure that we are also monitoring and looking at the processes. Yes. So regarding research, indeed, we need to have policies to support research and regulatory. We need to have a regulatory body to look into this. We need to work with the ethics board, among other boards, to ensure that this is aligned. And we have multiple partners who are willing to support in matters research. And so it will be open dialogue, consultation and discussion, and see who can join us to support in the agenda of health research, this being another activity that I wish to undertake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, first and foremost, I wish to state that the nominee comes from my county, and especially Saboti. But that will not conflict my assessment of her capacity to serve in that ministry. And I am comfortable from where I sit of her competence, but what I'm worried is that the ministries, especially the Ministry of Health, is a theater of politics. And, you know, the previous minister also hailed from my Saboti constituency. I don't want a brain drain of my sisters coming to Nairobi and being swallowed by the politics of the town. How are we kept in terms of interpersonal relations and the politics that goes around and the cabal of corrupt individuals around the ministries? How will you deal with it? Then secondly, the chief, NHIF transiting to SHA. I think a segment of it is called chief. Is it prudent? Why not revitalize the NHIF in terms of digitalization, prudent utilization of resources, instead of transiting, which means you could also transit corruption? Lastly, Speaker, it is my view that Kenya is ripe to be a medical tourist destination, just like Turkey, just like Malaysia, is a policy on tourism.
The biggest is India.
Yes, thank you. And now being a regional hegemony, you know, we can start with the region, not even beyond Africa, but just as a region. Do you believe that we are ripe to be a medical destination? If so, how? And if not, why?
Nominee.
Thank you, Honorable Member. And indeed, I love your last statement about having Kenya as a tourist destination. Having worked with the World Health Organization, Eastern Southern Africa, that covers the Eastern and Southern Africa region, it's actually based here in Nairobi. It's in the Kenyatta University Teaching and Referral Hospital. It is a regional office. And I have seen the tremendous things that have happened there. We've had expatriates come to stay here with their family, and that has increased. Our Kenyans have been employed through this. Tourism has also expanded, and also some of the products that they buy that are utilized in the office are being bought from Kenya. Equally, as they look into developing infrastructure, most of the time they're using local products. And if they also want to transport these health products, they can consider us. So first of all, I believe that we need to embrace regional partners, not just the country office, the country representatives, but regional partners such as the African Union, World Health Organization, among other partners, because they are bringing expertise from abroad, and these are the ones that will strengthen, build capacity, and also mobilize resources. Equally, we need to think about becoming centers of excellence in Kenya. This may not be achieved maybe this time, but it can be a long-term vision so that we capacitate our facilities. A lot has been done in the KU TRRH hospital, among other hospitals, and I think that is the momentum or the way to go in terms of building a capacity and becoming centers of excellence for Africa.
Just to, if you allow me, Honorable Speaker, on the question of medical tourism, yes. You've dwelt much on the aspect of expatriates coming into the country. India is one of the countries that receives the most number of patients who go to live there, stay in their hotels, use their... So it's a big beneficiary of medical tourism. Tanzania, across the border here, there's so many people from the coast who go to a hospital that is called Muhimbili or something. And many of them go there, and they benefit a lot in terms of revenue because of patients going out there. Kenya has just been sending away patients. It has not been receiving. in terms of policy framework and legislation, what would you propose if you are given this opportunity to develop Kenya as a medical tourism destination so that we can reap big in terms of our giving out medical services and also in terms of bringing revenue into, in the form of tourism in the country? What policy and legislative frameworks would you propose?
That you combine with Caleb and Mrs. question about medical tourism. Go ahead.
And the speaker also the transit from NHIF to SHIF or SHA.
Go ahead. Yes, Deborah, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much, honorable members. The first thing we need to do is assess and look at best practices from the other countries, such as India. What have they done in terms of building their capacity? And how can we improve? What are the timelines? What are the budget costs? In terms of specialists, we need to ensure that we have top-notch specialists in the areas and also expand the medical equipment that can be utilized for this. And again, the infrastructure, the logistics, among other aspects that are involved. And so, yes, it is true that we need to have policies with regards to this, but in terms of how to progress, I think that we need to look at the priorities in Kenya. We don't have affordable, accessible, quality of care for patients. And I'll give an example. When I was in Fikiria Jamii, there was a widowed. She had 3 children. She used to wash clothes in Isili. And this lady had developed complications, and we had to send her to Kenyatta Hospital. And so we had to dig deep into our pockets to get money for her transport and her consultation. Once we did that, she went to Kenyatta Hospital, and an array of investigations, including invasive ones, were requested by the doctor. They could have cost her an arm and a leg. And for treatment, it would cost her life because she could not afford it. So coming back, I think we need to have our priorities right. And that is offering affordable, accessible care to all Kenyans, the vulnerable, the needy, the orphans, the widows, those who are unable to support themselves. And after that, we can think long-term of having Kenya as a medical hub.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Dr. Baraza, considering the recent reports of vaccine stockouts and the shift in policy regarding donor-funded programs like those provided through Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, what are your plans for ensuring sustainable financing and reliable procurement of vaccine and essential health products during your tenure as a Cabinet Secretary for Health? Another thing is about, and I think Honorable Kareb has asked you, it's regarding the transfer from NHIF to SHIF. To tell you the truth, majority of our people, they are not getting it, and they are not even registering. So I would like to know, to hear from you, if you happen to get this chance, what are you going to do about it? Thank you.
Go ahead, nominee.
Thank you for those wonderful questions. And I will start with the last one, transfer from NHIF to SHIF. The service is to the people of Kenya. And so we need to engage them. They need to own it. they need to understand it. We need to embrace and have community feedback, and then work on it to see how we can intervene. And I believe that that was one of the challenges, that the community was not involved. We did not have robust communication with the community. I think it is critical for us to engage the community so that they understand the vision of Chief, and they also contribute to see how this vision can come to fruition. Equally, it's important for us to involve the stakeholders, the counties, the county government, partners, among others, to make this come into fruition. So the dialogue is really critical when we are looking to transfer patients. And then we can come up with appropriate interventions. Regarding vaccine stockout, pooled procurement can be done amongst various countries, say for instance in Eastern African region. And then we can also consider talking to the Treasury and see if resources can be allocated, as well as discussing with partners in terms of supporting in the area of vaccine.
Mishimbogo. Honorable Mishimbogo.
Thank you, Honorable Chairman. Honorable Chairman, my first question, it is on the issue of the program dubbed as Linda Mama. This program used to facilitate free delivery by our expectant mother in this country. But right now it has been faced with quite a number of challenges, making women suffer, especially those who are expectant. I don't know if you're appointed, what mitigation measures are you going to put in place to ensure the Linda Mama program or a replica of Linda Mama program is enshrined so that our women will no longer suffer? My second question, it is about the rising mental health burden in this country, where some studies have shown that in every five people, one is suffering from health disorder. And this has been witnessed in our learning institution, especially in our universities, in our secondary schools, where we have seen love triangles cases, we have seen some suicide cases, some reckless killing, and so many other issues. And this issue is compounded by a fragile mental health system, socioeconomic challenges, and cultural attitudes. Given the existing mental health policies and action plans, what are the key challenges facing the mental health system? If appointed, what policies will you put in place to address these challenges? That is the immediate, the medium term, and the long term. And also, is the mental health integrated in the UHC? My last question, Honorable Speaker. No, I have the last one. This is last one. The other time I asked only one question, Honorable Chairman. I just want to ask the last question. Kenya right now has a deficit in terms of doctor-to-patient population. Now with the government directives, which frees new employment and term wage bill, what strategy are you going to ensure that we have more health provided, and especially for those dealing with chronic diseases such as cancers, because we have free oncologists. Also in the mental disorders, we have free psychiatrists. What are you going to ensure that at least we have more specialized doctors? Thank you.
You followed 3 questions. Linda Mama, will you bring it back in its same form or another? What do you do with mental patients and mental health care? Okay.
Yes, through you, Honorable Chair, I'd like to address the concerns. I am a beneficiary of Linda Mama, and my daughter is a beneficiary of Linda Mama. And so I'm an advocate of it. And I will ensure that it's incorporated if SHIF is rolled out. Now, during the transition period, at times such activities may, fall through the cracks, but funds have been allocated from the discussions we were having while I was in WHO with the national team. So we need to have a transition plan or guidelines to ensure that some of these critical covers like the Linda Mama are always there when we are transitioning. So this is an area that we look to and ensure that all mothers and the children are covered. I will combine the mental health and doctors to patient population. Indeed, this is not just the doctors, but the health workforce in general. We need to look at how we can protect them and how they can grow in their career. And so I will engage the universities and other training programs such as the Eastern Southern College of Physicians, the surgical programs, the obstetrics and gynecology programs, and have deliberations on other programs that we can have in the country for our health workers to progress in their career, because we can have even clinical officers, nurses specializing in mental health, in matters oncology, among others. Equally, it is critical, again, as I said earlier, to strengthen the community health programs and the primary care networks with mental health specialization or professionals that have been trained in mental health. And so these are areas that we can look into addressing.
Sharia.
Thank you, Chairman. Dr. Deborah. KEMSA has been in the public domain for procurement irregularities affecting donor funds. What's your comment on that? And if approved, what policies do you have in mind in safeguarding public resources and the management of KEMSA? Question number 2. Chapter 6 of the Constitution and the Leadership and Integrity Act 2011 imposes the highest standards of trust and integrity for state and public officers. And this is in relation to what my colleague was saying. How do you intend to address the public perception of the Ministry of Health as a mafia house associated with corruption and lack of accountability? What specific strategies will you employ to enhance transparency, restore public trust, and ensure that the ministry operates with the highest level of integrity?
Thank you, Honorable Member, for the wonderful question. And indeed, KEMSA has been in the public domain. What I intend to do, again, is to strengthen the processes and procedures, and that one of the areas is looking at the digital platform, as well as having external bodies conduct routine auditing. Again, visibility and accountability reforms, as well as engaging or a consultative approach to involve other sectors such as ESCC to look into these issues. We need to have transparent tenders, and I will hold my office with high integrity according to the laws.
Yes, Didaras.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Dr. Deborah, a healthy nation is a wealthy nation. And I want to echo my colleagues what they have said. The health docket is a big docket. It's a very serious docket. And also is a docket with a lot of contestation and a lot of conflict. Having said that, almost 4 years ago, we sent many doctors to Cuba. And also Cuban doctors came to Kenya. We never had any feedback. I really want to hear from you what has been that feedback, whether positive or negative, and if there are any positive things, what is it that we have been able to borrow from the Cuban health system? A second question is, you have been a medical registrar at Kenyatta National Hospital. Across the road, you walk to Nairobi Hospital. In Kenyatta National Hospital, you have the largest Kenya Medical Training College in Eastern Central Africa. And also, you have the largest teaching hospital, university, that trains doctors. When you compare the two facilities just across the road, in one you are in Europe, and in the other one you are in somewhere in Africa, not even in Nairobi.